Howdy everyone, welcome to FSC Live. My name is Jim Stanger. I'm the board president of the Friends of Sloan Canyon. We're a 501c nonprofit. We do conservation work. We partner with folks like the Bureau of Land Management and other community nonprofits to do conservation work at Sloan Canyon, which is one of your national conservation lands. We have a great program tonight. We've got Alan O'Neill, one of our board members, who does work all throughout the conservation community, and he's going to be talking to us about conserving some natural and cultural landscapes in the area. I'll let him talk about that. First of all, I got a couple of announcements, nonprofit announcements, am I right? So things that Friends of Sloan's doing these days. It's been we kind of go into low profile during the summer, the hot summer weeks. It's too hot to do work out on the trail. So we usually do online outreach, things like that. What's been occupying us over the summer is there's a piece of legislation out there that has been recently introduced called the Southern Nevada Economic Development and Conservation Act, SNEDCA. It's Clark County is working with Congress to take steps to do a few things. One is expand the development zone that Clark County uses. They call it the disposal boundary. It's an imaginary line around Metro Las Vegas Valley that notes where Clark County can put the development, your residential, commercial, and industrial development. Clark County wants to expand that disposal boundary, and then they also want to help conserve some local, wilderness spaces, some areas in southern Nevada that are very worthy of protection for the future. Our group, most of the development, most of the expansion for this disposal boundary is going to be in the area of Sloan. It's actually going to be south of Henderson in the Jean Dry Lake and Hidden Valley area. That does concern us because Sloan Canyon is already kind of impacted by vegetation. Even though it doesn't get nearly the visitation that Red Rock or other areas do, it's still heavily impacted, especially the culture. Cites Petroglyph Canyon, sees a lot of visitors every year, and there's a lot of negative impacts out there so far. So, we feel that there's not enough attention being paid to helping to protect Sloan a little more, right? So if there's development out in Jean and Hidden Valleys in the decades ahead, Sloan Canyon NCA and the North McCullough Wilderness specifically is going to be hugged by development. And what that means for preserving the natural and character of the area is a big question right now. So we're hoping that Congress will help take some extra steps, build some extra items into the legislation that will help protect Sloan. So if there is future growth and development, the NCA is protected properly. We encourage you to find more about. There's links to all the legislation, our thoughts on the legislation, and things you can do to help make your voice heard at our website, friendsofsloan.org. It's right there in front. You can read the documentation. Let's see, other things that are happening. So there is some stewardship that we have planned. As the weather cools down, we're going to be getting back out in the trail. Our first big event, we are partnering with BLM, with SNAP, which is a Southern Nevada agency partnership, and Get Outdoors Nevada. Everybody knows Get Outdoors Nevada. We're going to be all partnering up to do some litter collection out at the McCullough Hills area. And this is for National Public Lands Day. This is Saturday, September 25th. Just sort of like what we did last year, there's going to be a couple, rather than have everybody get together in one group, we're working with our partners to have maybe two shifts. We're going to have a sort of a morning, two morning shifts. So it'll be like an 8 to 10 period where you can volunteer, for an early shift, or if you like to sleep in, and who doesn't, you don't have to get there at dark 30. You can sign up for actually a 10 to 12 shift also. So, a few different reasons. We're giving folks that like to get up at different times options. They can help, preserve Sloan Canyon, help make a difference out in your public lands. And then also I think there's, an effort to spread folks out a little bit. So there's still some weirdness out there with COVID. We are encouraging folks to be as active as possible. Anybody that wants to volunteer, we want to give you that chance and help you do that, help you make a difference in public lands, but also make sure that you're not, surrounded by 40 or 50 people with various, That's where where things are still very strange. So this will give you a chance to volunteer and help us out there, and still not be surrounded by a lot of people. So look for it on the website for more on that. And if you'd like to sign up, you can sign up at Get Outdoors Nevada's website, getoutdoorsnevada.org. Again, that's Saturday, September 25th. Let's see. Let's go ahead and jump into the program. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing Alan. I'll let him do that himself. He's one of our board members, though, and he has a lot of experience. He worked at for the National Park Service for many, many years, including a stint as superintendent here at Lake Mead National Recreation Area. All righty, take it away, Alan.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome everybody. We're excited to bring these programs to you, let you know what's going on in our state in terms of conservation activity and such. Jim gave a little bit of my background. I've been working now about 56 years in public lands and conservation work. Most of my career was with the National Park Service. Last 13 years was superintendent of Lake Mead National Recreation Area, and then I started the Outside Las Vegas Foundation when I retired from the Park Service and served as the executive director for 10 years. Outside Las Vegas Foundation, as many of you may know, was rebranded as Get Outdoors Nevada, so it's one of a really great nonprofit thing. Presently, I serve as an advisor to the National Parks Conservation Association, and I'm proud to be a board member of the Friends of Sloan Canyon. So I'm going to set up my PowerPoint here and share the screen. Okay. Let's see here, slideshow. What happened, Jim?
Oh, we can see it. I think there we go. It's
trying to start from the beginning.
Slideshow mode from the beginning. There we go.
It's not working. Oh well. I'll do it this. How do I get rid of that side comment slideshow?
Resume slideshow. There we go.
Yeah. There we go. We'll be talking about the proposed Vicom National Monument there in South Clark County. This is a proposal to establish a brand new national monument on about 383,000 acres of BLM public land in southern Clark County. If you're not familiar, these lands, at least in my mind, contain some of the most visually stunning, biologically diverse, and culturally significant lands in the entire Mojave Desert. Now, Vicom is a Mojave name for Spirit Mountain. I want to emphasize that this monument effort is a citizen-driven initiative. It's not a government initiative. Very similar to what was happened when we got the Tule Springs Fossil Bed National Monument established and the Gold Butte National Monument. So a group of conservation organizations, tribes, recreation interests, outdoor businesses, and local residents are working on this monument proposal. It really started in response to several really bad wind projects in that part of Clark County. We were fighting those for years and finally defeated them, and we thought something had to be done to protect this area. We're gonna just have the next bad project, and we already have another one that's been proposed in that area. So it's important to get this work done. We've been working for several years on a campaign to educate the general public, all of our local communities, the user groups, tribes, local, state, and national political leaders about the importance of protecting what we consider a nationally significant cultural and ecological landscape. The Friends of Sloan are part of this coalition effort. Presently, we have about 3,800 people who have signed a petition in support of the monument. We have the support of almost all the local and national conservation organizations, as well as the Nevada Outdoor Business Coalition, and such. So and this is still growing, this list is still growing, but almost all the conservation user groups have weighed in support of this. We have a resolution of support from the Mojave tribe, the Chemehuevi tribe, and the Mohave tribe. And we have letters from tribal organizations like the Las Vegas Indian Center, the Native American Alliance, the Native American Association, Student Association at UNLV. We also have a resolution in support of the monument from the Boulder City Council, as well as a Searchlight Town Advisory Board and the Boulder City Chamber of Commerce. And we're trying to get one from the Laughlin Town Advisory Board. You'll see in this photograph, there's a picture of Spirit Mountain. Spirit Mountain looks different depending on which direction you're viewing at. The photo on the right shows a recent gathering we had on the monument with our senior U.S. Senator Kathleen Cortez Masto. And you can see these are members of the Mojave tribe. The Mojave tribe, since they're closest to Spirit Mountain, are considered the stewards on behalf of the 10 Yuman-speaking tribes in the area. You may ask, what is the National Monument? National Monument is a permanent designation. I think that's important for our public lands. It's established by Congress to protect important values. These values, in this case, include recreation, natural and cultural resources, the visual resources, as well as dark night sky and natural quiet, while preventing these inappropriate large-scale industrial development of these public lands. Again, I point out the Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument in the northern part of Las Vegas Valley was established legislatively. Monuments can also be established through presidential executive orders under the Antiquities Act of 1906. The Gold Butte National Monument and the Basin and Range National Monument in Nevada, for example, were established under that authority by President Obama, as were the Castle Mountains National Monument and Mojave Trails National Monument on the California side. So National Monument designation is similar in how they're managed to areas that you may be familiar with, say Red Rock Canyon and Sloan Canyon National Conservation Areas, but offer some flexibility that we needed in this. Here is a map of the monument. If you look at the blue there, the idea was to protect an expanse of relatively intact East Mojave Desert system in Nevada that provides continuity to the other parts of the East Mojave Desert already protected on the California side. You'll see here we have Mojave National Preserve, Castle Mountains National Monument, Mojave, the Mojave Trails National Monument, and the Dead Mountains Wilderness. So you have the entire California side of that ecosystem and a high level of protection, but nothing really on the Nevada side here except for the South McCullough Wilderness and the Wee Thump Wilderness. So the idea was to connect all the good work that's been done over here from the monument all the way over to Lake Mead National Recreation Area and to connect with the Boulder City Conservation Area. Now, about 89% of this area already has some level of protection from an area of critical environmental concern, but it's really not sufficient to protect other key values. So when we were looking at developing this boundary, we used an ecological overlay based on data that the Nature Conservancy had done on their Mojave Desert ecological assessment. So it really is scientifically valued and determine where the highest overall values in this area intersect. We then overlaid that with a cultural overlay, and that was based upon our work with the Mojave tribe, which coordinated with the other affiliated tribes. So based on these two overlays, we developed the proposed boundary. So what do we want to achieve with a national monument designation? Very important here is to protect the sacred Native American cultural sites and values. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the presentation. We also want to protect the native plants and animals, also the critical migratory corridors for bighorn sheep and other species. Also, and this was of tremendous interest to the local communities like Searchlight, that we protect existing recreational uses, including hunting, camping, hiking, and backcountry driving on existing designated routes and trails. And so important in this area, the spectacular views. We wanted to protect that from large-scale industrial development, such as those huge wind farms that were proposed for this area. There's also some issues there dealing with the health of the residents. Some of these soils in the monument region have high levels of naturally occurring asbestos and fungus, and the fungus, which is a source of valley fever. So when they're largely disturbed by industrial level projects, that can be a health concern. We also want to protect the existing mining claims. I mean, the mining would prevent future new mining claims, but protecting existing claims and private property and utility rights of way. I want to mention here also, some of you may be aware, others may not, but we have a global initiative called the 30 by 30 Global Initiative. Now there's, I think, 65 different countries around the world that have joined this effort to protect 30% of the planet's lands and waters by 2030. And when the Biden administration came in, they jumped right on board, and they're calling the U.S. piece of that America the Beautiful Initiative. But it's to protect 30% of this country's lands and waters by 2030. We worked this year with the state of Nevada legislature and their Clark County Commission. They both passed resolutions in support of this 30 by 30 initiative. And the state resolution specifically mentions a Vicom as an example of how we might meet that 30 by 30 goal. And what they're finding is that protecting and managing natural ecosystems like the Vicom is increasingly recognized as a necessary, efficient, and really a cost-effective strategy for addressing climate change. It's not the only solution, but it's becoming a very important one. So when we were developing those boundaries for the monument, we wanted to connect existing protected areas in the East Mojave Desert to include those critical migratory routes, elevation, differences in zones, and the special niches. So it was important to establish those boundaries at a large enough scale that you can maintain the ecosystem structure and diversity that would support the population of species large enough that could survive over time. So when you connect the monument to Lake Mead National Recreation Area, what you really are doing is connecting the East Mojave Desert to the Colorado Plateau. So that provides an even larger connected landscape. And we know in a changing climate, protected areas like a Vicom become safe havens for plants and animals to reproduce despite these changing conditions. Under climate change, for example, we know species ranges will shift, Many habitats will be altered by factors like increased disturbance and changes in weather patterns and natural processes such as forest fire, pest, and disease outbreak. So when you're connecting these terrestrial habitats across varied landscapes, it enables plants and animals to make some shifts in their ranges and survive in new locations. So we see Vicome as an important part of our state responding to that America the Beautiful initiative. Now let's talk about some of the actual features of the monument. Some of you may be familiar with that, some may not. Joshua trees. The monument lands actually form the eastern terminus of the world's largest Joshua tree forest. Certainly some of the oldest and largest Joshua trees on the planet are found within this proposed monument. If you look on the left over here, Jim actually found this tree. We're going to give Jim credit for locating this tree. We've nicknamed it the monument tree, and we had the State Division of Forestry out to measure this because we thought this might be the new state record for Joshua trees, and sure enough, it was. When they're measuring big trees, they measure the circumference around the base, or around about there, and also the height and the width. And this blew the old record to shreds. In fact, it's the third largest Joshua tree on the planet. The only other two larger in California, and we're concerned that they may have been lost in the dome fire that happened there last summer. So this could be the largest Joshua tree known on the planet. But this whole area has an incredible Joshua tree forest. In terms of its plants, there's no question this is a hot spot for botanical diversity. There's several dozen sensitive and special status species present. There's also a really unusual array of native grasses, some 28 different native grasses. You usually don't find those in this type of a desert landscape, and about half of those are rare. And what's really interesting is that it contains a large subtropical grasslands that, normally found in the Sonoran Desert down in the southern part of Arizona and Mexico. So finding it up here is quite a surprise. You can see down here how significant those grasslands are. You just don't see that very much in the Mojave Desert. Desert tortoise, this area contains the largest area of high quality tortoise habitat in Nevada. And most people say it also possesses the highest desert tortoise densities. The good thing is it's also contiguous with a large high density area in California and those other protected areas. Another very important asset, it's an important birding area. It's been designated by Audubon as an important birding area. That's because the number and the variety of special species that are present. This designation is an important one when Audubon actually makes that formal designation as an important birding area. It's important for the migratory birds due to the forage habitat, nesting habitat, and of course, its relationship to the Colorado River, which is one of the most significant features in the Pacific Flyway. But the area also has a unique Sonoran bird population that we find much more typical in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. Species like the gilded flickers, Harris hawks, and a possible resident population of curve-bill thrashers. Here's some pictures of those species. The area contains one of the highest known density of golden eagles in Nevada. In addition, there's about 18 species of raptors, 10 of these raptors are actually species of special concern by the Nevada Department of Wildlife, and they're target species for conservation in their Nevada Wildlife Action Plan. So again, this is an important a resource on the, and some of those species are like the Gila monster, which you know, is becoming more and more rare. And you can see, you know, the type of habitat we have here when you have a spring bloom down there, how tremendously diverse that habitat is. There's a number of important water sources within the proposed monument. There's also some guzzler developments in areas like the Highland Range. Probably the most prominent springs are Pine Springs, Hyco Springs. Here, Hyco Springs Canyon is a really spectacular canyon, about 3 miles long, very incised with high density of petroglyphs. McCullough Springs is a very important natural spring. Granite Springs is one of the most important natural springs area, particularly to the tribes, and most particular to the Mojave tribe, but also important to the Chemehuevi Paiute and others. In terms of geologic resources, there are a number of important features. You have the really rugged and ragged Highland Range here on the bottom left here. I really hadn't spent much time there until I got involved in the monument. I was astounded by how beautiful and colorful and rugged that landscape is. There's a transmission line corridor road where you can access the kind of the interior of the Highland Range in 6 different locations, pretty spectacular. And the Newberry Mountains are these granitic mountains. Spirit Mountain is part of the Newberries, but the Newberries mountains are much more extensive, and they're kind of a granitic mountain. And then you have the Piute Range, which is a volcanic range, and then the South McCullough Mountains, and then you have the dark mountains further south. Again, there's a number of scenic canyons. In the Highland Range, there's lots of valleys and canyons there. There's another shot of the Hyco Springs Canyon. There's a number of interesting canyons and sandstone formations in the southern part of the Highland Range. So that's kind of a quick capsule of some of the ecological values. But as important as this area is ecologically, it's certainly equally significant, and maybe even more so, it's a cultural landscape. The area is, I call it a living laboratory. It kind of showcases as the Western movement, as we move from the East to the West in the Western movement, almost everything that was part of that Western movement occurred on this landscape. So I call it the crossroads of the American West. You can see some of the cultural resources and these slides here. Some of them are very significant, like this site here. Some of the petroglyph sites, these are Hyco Canyon. Most of this monument, not all of it, is within the viewshed of Spirit Mountain. And Spirit Mountain is considered sacred. This entire landscape that we're proposing for the monument is sacred by the 10 Yuman-speaking tribes. That's the Mojave, the Wallapai, Havasupai, Yavapai, the Pai, and other tribes. It's those tribes that traditionally travel and up and down the Colorado River system. But it's also sacred to the Hopi and the Chemehuevi Paiute. For the Yuman-speaking tribes, it's the center of their creation story. And it figures really predominantly in their spiritual ideology. They believe that the mountain is a spiritual birthplace of the tribes. the place where their ancient ancestors emerged into this world. Um, when I was superintendent at Lake Mead back in the 1990s, we actually got Spirit Mountain designated as a traditional cultural property and on the National Register of Historic Places. And that was to recognize that traditional cultural property recognized the spiritual and sacred significance of a landscape. And kind of interesting because it carried with it a way that we need to look at management differently in these traditional cultural properties. On the right here, again, we had Congresswoman Susie Lee out to the monument several months back, meeting with Mojave tribal leaders and members. Very interesting for the Mojave tribe. Just this last year, they reintroduced the native language into their elementary schools. And here was when they dedicated their new cultural center. The kids sang 2 songs in their native language. Very emotional ceremony. They've been concerned, all the tribes, about losing their language over time. And so this was a major step forward in teaching the younger generation their traditional language. Here's a gathering of the Yuman tribes for ceremony. You can see this: honor, respect, and protect. The lower slide here is a photo of Spirit Mountain. Again, this looks different than some of the other photos. You can see the rugged granite spheres here, incredibly rugged and beautiful landscape. The Dead Mountains, which are on the south side of the proposed monument, are also considered sacred to the Yuman-speaking tribes and to the Chemehuevi Paiute. They contain also sacred and ritual importance that's associated with their cosmogony and their religious events, their religious figures, and the burial places. In fact, the Dead Mountain Wilderness area on the California side of the boundary was actually the first wilderness area created for its cultural and sacred significance. Obviously, the monument lands contain other very important Native American sites. The tribes aren't very concerned about identifying where those sites are, but we know that there are a lot of significant sites. In terms of human, more recent history, Walking Box Ranch, Jim's also involved as the president of the Friends of Walking Box Ranch. This ranch has an incredibly colorful history, all the way back to the turn of the century in 1900s. But it's probably most noteworthy time was when the legendary film stars Rex Bell and his wife Claire Bow owned the property, and it really became a retreat for the Hollywood elite at the time. It was actually added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2009. BLM has done a restoration of the cultural features there. The Friends of Walking Box Ranch hope to be able to have guided tours in here and sometime in the next year. This is really, really an important site. It has its importance in the whole movie making industry cannot be overstated. This really was the hangout for the Hollywood elite. Clara Bow had a status as a movie star unlike any today. I don't think there's any star in today's movie industry that had the fame that she had. So that was a silent movie era, and then of course they then went into the talking films, and Rex Bell, later became Lieutenant Governor of Nevada. But there's a very, very interesting history here, and this is an important part of the cultural history of the monument areas. I don't know whether any of you have ever driven the old Mojave Road, but this started as the historic Mojave Trail and a section of the historic route originally used by the Mojave and other tribes to transport goods from the Southwest to trade with the Chumash and other coastal tribes in California. That was an important trade route for the Native Americans, but this route later served in a Western expansion. In the 1960s, the Mojave Road served both civilian and military mail carriers and supply wagons between the Arizona Territory and California. You'll see down here one of the military forts that was established along the Mojave Road. The Fort Piute is actually in Mojave National Preserve, but you access it through this proposed monument. The Garces expedition, if you look all the way back to 1775, that area, Francisco Garces was looking to open a land route between Tucson, which was the Arizona Territory back then, in California. So he was actually the first European or non-white to enter Nevada. In 1776, he did reach the Mojave villages that were on the Arizona bank of the Colorado River, right there within the southern part of the proposed monument. He traveled alone in areas never before seen by a white man, and he relied on the Indian guides, the Mojave guides, to walk from village to village, and the Mojave actually agreed to lead him to the coast. So on March 4th, accompanied by 4 natives, he crossed the Colorado River and reached the San Gabriel Mission 20 days later. And his route followed the prehistoric Mojave trail that we talked about earlier. And another interesting piece of history is the United States Army Camel Corps, which started up in 1855. In 1855, Congress actually authorized money to bring 75 camels from Egypt. And these were to serve as frontier military beasts of burdens, primarily because of their adaptability to desert heat, drought, and food. So Lieutenant Beale used 25 of the camels in his 4-month and 1,200-mile expedition to California. And like the Garces expedition, they crossed the Colorado River near Fort Mojave in 1857. And that's known now as Beale's Crossing. And even though these camels actually proved themselves to be superior to horses and mules in the desert, the Civil War was approaching, and the people who supported the Camel Corps, like head of the Confederacy, went off in different directions. Jefferson Davis was Secretary of the War at the time, and these camels were kept in Texas. So after the war, when steam engines and railroads made evaluating the effectiveness of this new desert crossing medium less necessary. So the camel program simply became lost amid the more pressing post-war concerns of rebuilding, uniting this country at the time. But very interesting time in the history. Again, I mentioned the Piute Springs and the Fort Piute. Kind of an interesting side note. Anybody that's followed our U.S. Senator Harry Reid's environmental journey, his interest in the environment really started at Piute Springs. As a young boy growing up in the Searchlight area, he used to go to Piute Springs and swim and enjoy the spring and kind of the stream that was there that emanated from the springs. And that's where, as kids, they used to go and hang out and such. And when he was elected to Congress he went back and was shocked at what had happened that particular spring. It was partially dewatered, and the lush oasis that he remembered was diminished significantly. And he thought that, if this is happening here, we need to be concerned with what was happening throughout the country. And that really started his interest in the environment and environmental journey. I had a good fortune to go out with the folks that just produced a film on Senator Reid's environmental journey and such. And Searchlight, the monument excludes Searchlight itself, but that whole area, as many of you know, has a very interesting history in terms of gold and silver mining. And again, Harry Reid grew up in Searchlight. Those early discoveries of gold were first made back in 1897. In the early 1900s, Searchlight really was a very busy mining town, about 1,500 people. And at that time, it was larger than Las Vegas. And of course, silver, they also mined silver there. And this was a really high, Searchlight was a very high producer, that mining district here. There were over 300 mining claims at the time. Eventually, gold and silver, the cost went up to mine it, and the grade of ore went down, so people started to move. So by 1927, there were only about 50 people left in Searchlight. Today, there's about 300. But several of these mines have reopened because of the increasing price of gold. Another interesting thing is the Crescent Peak Mining District, which was in the monument, proposed monument. The history of turquoise mining, that was discovered back in 1889 by George Simmons, and he was following a trail up the side of Crescent Peak, and he came upon a source which proved to be the abandoned remains of a mine worked by the Native Americans, most likely the Mojave. They were large fragments of turquoise that laid scattered around with abandoned stone chisels and wedges, hammers, and they estimate that the mine must have been worked and abandoned about 1200 sometime. The kind of interesting, the unusual way of extracting the ore, the turquoise, by the Native Americans was to build a fire against the face of the rock, and then they throw the hot stones against that, which caused it to crack, and then they put wedges. They drove wedges into the cracks until the mass broke away, and so it looked like they did that for probably several hundred years or so, until that overhanging roof became a menace. They could only go so far and so deep using that mining technique. But later, a number of turquoise mines opened in the area and became the Crescent Peak Mining District. Those mines are closed now. They were mined up by 1976. Look at recreational visual resources. The backcountry driving here is very, very significant, and we've heard that from a lot of the publics, the user groups. There's a good network of designated roads and trails for backcountry access. If you go and I'll give you the website address here, but we did post a number of these backcountry routes that people could take to access some of these proposed monument lands. The area also provides hunting opportunities, primarily for desert bighorn sheep, but there are deer and smaller game animals here as well. We think the viewscapes are one of the most valuable resources in the area. Almost from anywhere, you can see the prominent and granitic Spirit Mountain, as well as the Castle Mountains and Castle Peaks. You can see the South McCullough Range from the northern part, and the Dead Mountains from the southern part. A dark night sky is of increasing value. The Friends of Sloan Canyon, under Jim's guidance, he's the one that provides these. We've been doing dark night sky evenings to introduce the community to dark night skies and such, because this is becoming a diminishing resource. As you know, Las Vegas is probably the highest density of light pollution on the planet. And so many of the kids in our community have never really experienced a dark night sky. And we're still fortunate on the proposed monument lands to have a number of areas which have excellent dark night sky resources. And so we think that is important to preserve so that we can make that experience available to our community and such. And natural quiet, that's another thing that concerns us about these large wind farms that were proposed. You forget about natural quiet when you got humming wind turbines going and all night and lit at night for safety reasons. There goes your dark night sky. So talk a little bit about, as this is kind of the end of the presentation, but there's been a number of recent economic studies that have concluded that national monuments really do help nearby communities diversify economically. At the same time, they're increasing the quality of life and the recreational opportunities that make our communities more attractive for new residents, businesses, and investments. We certainly have seen this in when we went through COVID, how people who may have not ever ventured out in the outdoors, all of a sudden, with nothing else to do, they discovered the outdoors. Of course, we need to educate them on how to use the outdoors and such. But it's exciting to think that we do have more and more interest in people using the public lands and exploring these special landscapes we have. There's a study that's done by Headwaters Economic that actually did an analysis of the economy surrounding 17 national monuments in 11 Western states. These were the larger monuments. And the evidence was really quite favorable, that they didn't prevent economic growth, which some people were concerned over in the Staircase Escalante. But the trends in key economic indicators were positive, whether it be employment, personal income, per capita income. They actually increased once the monuments were established. And I think, again, in today's economy, the greatest value of our natural amenities and recreational opportunities often lie in the ability of these protected lands to attract and retain people, entrepreneurs, their businesses, and a growing number of retirees who locate for quality of life reasons. You know, a lot of people don't understand the importance of the outdoor industry in Nevada. It's a strong and growing sector. You know, it generates every year roughly $12.6 billion in consumer spending in Nevada, about 87,000 jobs, and $4 billion in wages and salary. So this, according to the Outdoor Industry Association, and outdoor recreation actually ranks third in jobs sustained in Nevada, only behind gaming and tourism and healthcare. It's ahead of logistics and operations, IT, mining, and jobs sustained. And the data shows that a number of Nevada small business owners choose to do business in the state because of their access or closeness to public lands. So our Monument Coalition has set up a website. Encourage people to go there. Since some of you maybe have trouble spelling or pronouncing Vicome, you can go to the website honorspiritmountain.org and get information on the campaign, sign the petition in support and such. And also have a Facebook site and an Instagram site. So with that, that concludes the presentation. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hope you'll continue to watch the series that our friends at Sloan Canyon want to bring to the community.
Appreciate it, Alan. We did have a couple questions that have been flowing in. I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll, so didn't want to interrupt, but I did have a couple questions here. Kathy is asking, so I think she'd asked this back when you're talking about the streams in the area. She said you use the term guzzler. What's a guzzler?
Guzzler is an artificial water conveyance that the Department of Wildlife puts. It funnels water from a rainfall into a contraption that's accessible to bighorn sheep, and they also have guzzlers for smaller game. So these are, volunteers maintain that for the Department of Wildlife. They're mostly within these monument lands in the Highland Range, which is probably our top bighorn sheep habitat within the proposed monument.
Cool. And then let's see. Keith asked a little bit ago, off-road access. So you mentioned there were some designated roads. Are they going to go anywhere, or can you still, if you have a side-by-side or some OHV vehicle, or if the national monument is designated, can you still be able to bebop around?
We think it's very important to keep that designated route open. There's about 600 miles of backcountry road that are within the proposed monument. These routes have been in place, designated for about 20 years now, and we'd like to see that those designated routes be maintained within the monument.
I know I've been on a few of those routes with you. It's an amazing area back there, especially like Pipe Springs. We've had to Pipe Springs recently. That was pretty slick. Yeah. There's a lot of, speaking of getting out there, so somebody else asked also, Diane asked, so there's you had a lot of great pictures in your presentation. Where can they go to some of those places? If you just wanted to, if you're in a sedan with no special vehicles, no special wheels, and wanted to get out and see some of this area, where would you recommend people visit? Is there a site, a road? They want to see it for themselves.
If you didn't have a four-wheel drive vehicle or a high clearance vehicle, one of the popular routes is over Christmas Tree Pass, which is accessed just south of Cal Navarra. So if you're traveling south on 95 and past Searchlight and past Cal Navarra, turn off for Christmas Tree Pass is about 3 miles past Cal Navarra. It takes you up over Christmas Tree Pass and down into Lake Mead National Recreation Area. And you can see Grapevine Canyon, which has a very high concentration of petroglyphs. But a view of Spirit Mountain there is really spectacular. The Empire Wash Road, takes off from Cal Navarra, can also do that in a sedan, not the whole route, but at least part of it. I would go on the website. I think we have 6 or 7 of the routes marked there. A lot of these are accessible if you just have a little clearance, not necessarily four-wheel drive. Some of the Highland Range designated routes tend to be a little more high clearance four-wheel drive, but a number of these routes are simply just need a little clearance. They're not really hard to navigate. They're just, you want to make sure you have just a little clearance and such.
Groovy. Alrighty. And you said you get those routes at, just to reiterate the website, at honorspiritmountain.org. I believe it is, correct? I'll use the English version just to keep things simple here.
Yes.
Groovy. All right. I'm scanning YouTube for more questions. I don't see any, so I think we'll call it for here. We'll call it a day, please. If you have any questions, you can talk to somebody on social media. Reach out to me if you have any questions and social media isn't working for you. You can reach out to me or Alan. Just info@friendsofsloan.org. Ask a question about a Vicom or anything about the area, and we will find an answer for you. Alrighty. With that, we will call FSC Live a day. Thanks for joining everybody, and this presentation will be available recorded on YouTube. We had a little bit of problem with Facebook earlier, so we'll get this YouTube recording up on Facebook so that as many people can see it as possible. Alrighty, gang. Thank you very much. We hope to see you back on the trail soon. We hope everybody stays safe and healthy. I know it's getting still kind of weird out there, but be safe, and we'll see you on the trail very soon. Alrighty, bye-bye.